let me check and see if I am on here. I think I am live. Hi guys, can you guys see and hear me okay? Let me pop this up here. Awesome. Hi everybody. How's everything look? How's everything sound? Let me know. I'm going to angle this up just a little bit, get everything nice and perfect. How are you guys doing today? Happy Sunday, everybody. Hi, Josette. Hi, Cassandra. Hi, Leah. How's everybody doing? Hey, guys. Hey, Lorraine. Hey, Taisha. Hi, Davinia. Hey, Emily. All right, awesome. Everybody can see me and hear me okay. Everything's going good. I just want to make sure before we get started. I'm preheating a little bit of Isomalt too. And let's see, make sure I can see all the comments. I have my computer and my iPad set up here just to make sure. Yep. Oh, yes, definitely. Awesome. I think I do. Hey, Jan. Hi, Lindsay. Hi, Belinda. Awesome, awesome. I'm so excited for today's live demo. Thank you so much to Capital Confectioners for inviting me to do this. I'm really, really excited to show you guys the floating Isomalt Jellyfish. While we're waiting for everybody to jump on, I will show you the piece I have right back here. Right here. Here is my floating Isomalt Jellyfish. So you can see he is attached to the background, but it has the floating effect. And so this is going to be a combination of cast and pulled Isomalt. So I'm super excited to show you. And then we're also going to be talking about painting on Isomalt, specifically with airbrush colors, because you guys may have seen that I just came out with a brand new airbrush color line, Simi Color Splash. So I'm going to be showing you a little bit of using that today with layering different colors and opacities. So we're going to be making this floating showpiece. Awesome. Hey guys. Fantastic. Let me set this down back here. All right. Hey guys, awesome. I'm so excited. You guys are excited. Let's see. I should be able to go ahead and get started. So yeah, again, thank you so much for being here and thank you for having me here. I'm really, really gonna enjoy showing you guys this project today. Of course, as always, we're using Simi Isomalt. So I invented Simi Isomalt. This is a pre-cooked, ready-to-use Isomalt tile. So all you have to do is melt it in the microwave. So there's no cooking, there's no temperatures or recipes or anything like that. All you have to do is melt it down in the microwave for 30 seconds and then 15-second intervals until it's a liquid, so it makes it super duper easy. So that's what we're going to be doing today, but if you're interested in learning more about cooking it from scratch, I do have my recipe listed for free on my website. I put it in the description, simicakes.com, so you can get to it super easily. And so first off, before we get started, I just wanted to go over a little bit about the supply list and what you guys have in the goodie bags and things like that. So in the goodie bag, we did give the Isomalt samples, so you'll have some Simi Isomalt to play with, and we also put in the eye sheets. There was also a separate half sphere mold that they do coordinate with. It's different from our eye mold, but it definitely will work for creating those nice domes if you want to just get right started making your eyes. And those are just to give you kind of a little taste of Simi Isomalt if you haven't worked with it before, so that you can play around with it. And we're not going to use the eyes for this particular project, but it is getting close to Halloween season, and you can use them for lots of different things, but specifically Halloween, of course, is going to be really popular with eyes. I have some other free videos where you can see how I make the eyes, and you can see some different inspiration. I've put them into lollipops, like shakers. I've put them into like the center of roses and flowers, and you can use them for cupcakes and a whole bunch of spooky things. So there is lots of things that you can do with that if you want to get started right away. I also did put out the supply list for this project, so I have it right here. Of everything that you will need, so if you wanted to play along, that is awesome. I did put out a specific accessory kit for this project. If you didn't get that in advance, you definitely can go back and get it. It will be available from now on my website. It's separate from the VIP bag or from the goodie bag, but you can get that if you decide that you want to go back and do this project yourself, if you don't have the exact things. But I did put some different things that you can use, and I'll talk about some substitutions as well. But basically, you're just going to need some basic tools tools for working with isomalts like scissors, a little chef's blowtorch like you use for creme brulee, some silicone mats, and then whatever desired colors that you want to use to paint, because you could also dust this or you can hand paint it as well. So I'll kind of be going over everything individually as we use it for each step and whatever is going to work best. But if you guys have any questions, please feel free to write them in the comments. I'll be here. I have my iPad set up right here underneath so that I can see, and Mom is here too, so she will be reading out any questions that you guys have that I may have missed to make sure that we get all of them. And if you're watching the replay of this, or if you guys have questions later, remember you're always welcome to message me here on Facebook or send me an email, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about this demo today. All right, everybody doing good? Any questions so far? All looks awesome. Fantastic. Okay, so let me set this off to the side here. All right, so like I said, we're just going to be using the Simi Isomalt tiles, melting them down in the microwave for 30 seconds, and then 15-second intervals. If you haven't worked with Isomalt before, it's basically going to be a lot more stable and a lot less temperamental than real sugar, traditional boiled sugar. You could apply the same techniques to both, but Isomalt's a lot clearer, it's a lot stronger, and it's also going to be a lot less temperamental, like I said, specifically with humidity and moisture. So even in Florida, I'm here in Florida, it is raining today, it's still going to work really well for you. I do have a couple little tips and tricks, sealing it with glaze and things like that to help with humidity so it doesn't get sticky or anything, but it definitely is going to hold up a lot better than traditional real sugar. But if you wanted to use boiled sugar, you can apply all these same techniques to that. Now remember, when working with Isomalt, it is about 250 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 150 degrees Celsius, and so that is going to be really, really hot. Make sure you wear your gloves. It can even go up to 300 or above Fahrenheit, so make sure you wear your gloves. Don't follow my bad example of not wearing the gloves today, because I've been doing this for about 14 years and my hands have no heat sensitivity left, so I'm able to show you guys in more detail without the gloves. But I do recommend like a cotton and then a nitrile glove layered over that.
Jaylen's asking a question.
Yes.
Is there a substitute for the half sphere for people who can't find theirs?
Yes, there is a couple things you can do. So what she's talking about here is we're using, and this is a Simi mold. So this is actually a newer mold that I've started, making some pieces with and stuff. But this is the new Simi half dome or nest mold. And so you can see it is a silicone dome. It actually has a circle cut out of the bottom of it. And there's a reason for that. It gives you some leverage, which you'll see when I go to unmold. But if you don't have this silicone dome mold, the dome former, you can use a couple different things. You can use a metal bowl. So if you have a metal or like stainless steel bowl, you can grease it with a little bit of cooking spray. If you don't have a metal bowl but you have a nice smooth rounded bowl, you can just cover it in aluminum foil, as long as it's heat safe, of course. You could cover it in aluminum foil. If you use regular aluminum foil, you have to grease it with a little bit of cooking spray and then kind of wipe it down with a paper towel so it's a thin coat. Or you can use non-stick aluminum foil, which does not have to be greased. The only problem that I find with using something that has to be greased compared to something silicone that doesn't is it's slippery. So sometimes the Isomalt doesn't like to stick together. It slips off of it a lot easier and doesn't cling to it as well. So you may have to do a couple coats instead of just doing one pour like we're going to. Excuse me, you may have to do 2 pours just to kind of layer it up a little bit and fill any spots that don't want to stick as well. So you definitely can use that. Just experiment with it a little bit if you don't have one that is silicone. All right, so I'm going to turn my camera down, but again, definitely keep asking questions, guys. I love questions, so if you have any, just let me know in the comments, but I'm going to tilt you guys down so you can see what we're doing. All right, so I'm just going to go over to my microwave. I have preheated a little bit, but it probably, needs just a few more seconds in the microwave. So what we're going to do first, like I said, is just melt everything down, 30 seconds, and then 15-second intervals. You don't want to stir the Isomalt. I do apologize, too, if you guys hear any background rumbling. It is storming right now outside, so if you hear any kind of white noise in the background, that's what that is. But I'll try and talk loud enough that you guys won't be able to notice that. But anyway, you don't want to stir your Isomalt while it is heating because you don't want to mix in any excess air. So I just bring it to a boil and let it do its thing.
So Lindsay said she's never used Isomalt before. Can it be pulled thin for things like sugar spears?
Oh yes, absolutely. Isomalt is super strong, so it's going to be a lot hardier. You can get really thin, delicate pieces from actually hand stretching it and pulling it to pouring it out, which you'll see today with this piece, because it is a particularly delicate piece.
And you have many videos on blowing.
I do, yeah. Yes, I do have. If you wanted to do it blown, yeah, that's another good point. You could definitely do a blown piece instead if you wanted to. And I have a whole Isomalt Basics series on my YouTube channel, which is just under my name, Sidney Galpern. And you can do a whole bunch of different techniques, cutting those in half with a hot knife or something like that. So if you want more information on the basics of pulling and blowing and casting Isomalt, all of that is on my YouTube. Oh, okay, good. Mom will post it in the comments, the link of it, so that you can check that out. All right, so the first things we're going to pour is going to be the base pieces. So the background that it's going to be floating on and the base that's going to hold everything up, we're going to pour those first. So as you can see, I laid a different kind of mat out. This is a non-stick Teflon mat, so you don't have to grease this, which is nice. But again, if you don't have this, you could just use a piece of non-stick aluminum foil or a regular aluminum foil that has also been greased. So you could use that instead. I'm going to be using a part of my Simi Flex form, so you can use the Simi end caps, the flex caps, the short ones. You can use a long Simi Flex form. If you don't have these, which are basically just tubes of flexible silicone that you can arrange to pour against or into, you can also use any kind of metal, again, so you can use the edge of a cake pan, a cookie cutter, or something like that. But again, if it's metal, it has to be greased or else it won't come off. We're basically just going to be pouring a free-form shape for the background, but one of the edges we do want a nice flat edge and flat line so that it sticks evenly against the base, if that makes sense. So once I pour, it definitely will. So I'm just going to set that there and pour up against it, but the rest of the shape is just going to be kind of whatever it wants to. If you wanted something more perfect, you absolutely could use the longer Simi Flex forms or the Super Flex molds to create, you know, perfect abstract shapes. But for this, I want to kind of go with the flow a little bit, and we're going to be using our clear for this. So the clear is going to be perfect for this because I'm going to be airbrushing on top of it. So again, you want something that you can layer on top of with different colors, but I'm going to be talking more about the painting and layering effects too later. But basically I just melted that down. You see how it's nice and clear. It's also not boiling at this point, right? It's not sitting there and actively boiling and bubbling. That's important. Whenever it comes out of the microwave, it should be boiling because that will bring all of the hot air out and make sure you don't have bubbles in your Isomalt. But another thing is going to be that if you pour it while it's boiling and bubbling, you're going to pour those bubbles in. So if you just let it sit at room temperature for a couple minutes, you'll be left with this. You may see a couple bubbles on the bottom there or on the sides stuck to the bowl. I'm not as worried about those as I want to make sure the inside of the Isomalt is nice and clear and transparent. If you have any stray little bubbles, you can pop those afterwards, but it actually kind of adds to this look, so I didn't even pop any bubbles for my end piece once we pour it. So you can see that it is nice and clear, and that's going to be because I didn't stir it, I didn't let it settle. This is also with our Simi Isomalt tiles. You'll notice that it's super crystal clear to start with because we don't mix any air into it to begin with, so it is already really, really clear, but just with melting down any air pockets, that's what the boiling method is going to take away. So you want to make sure you start with crystal clear Isomalt in order to get crystal clear Isomalt pieces. Okay, so I'm just going to pour first against the base of the flex form, and then just kind of see where it goes. I want to add a little bit of shape to it here, and I just want to make sure it's tall enough to support my jellyfish. So I'm going to make mine around 9 inches tall if you want kind of a base to start with, but it's going to depend a little bit on the height of your piece. Okay, so I might take a little spatula and just smooth out some of these edges. I'm just going to kind of push it because right now they're a little wavy, which does look cool, but you may want it to be a little bit more perfect. So I'm just kind of pushing the Isomalt where I want it to go. And then if you have any little bubbles that are sitting on the top, if you want to pop those, you can just lightly torch over them like that. I kind of have mine going off to one side so that it's going to give it some movement. And then I'm going to take my measuring ruler and just kind of measure and see how wide that base is here where I poured. It's going to be about 4 inches. You can do it whatever size you like. This is going to be about 9 inches. So I just want to make sure whatever base I'm going to pour for this is at least 4 inches long. And so I'm just going to pour that over here.
Sid, Nicole would like to know what surface you're working on.
This is a non-stick Teflon mat. This specific mat I do carry on my website if you want the nice gold ones. This is the full size, and we also have the half size, which I'm going to be using a little bit later. All right.
And before Leona forgets, she wants to make sure that you still are offering the Airbrush Bundle with the airbrush.
Yes.
And you get the free airbrush class.
Yes, correct. Right now on our site, we're offering the bundle where if you buy either the Dinky Doodle airbrush set from our website with or without the new color kit, you get into my free Zoom class, my Airbrushing Basics Zoom class. That is going on right now, yes. All right.
But you'll get into airbrushing.
Yeah, definitely. I'll talk all about that.
Nicole wondered, could she use a Silpat mat?
You can use a Silpat mat, yeah. I personally don't love pouring right onto Silpat mats for flat pieces like this because from the heat they can bubble up and make your underneath of your pieces a little bit wavy. But for this look, I mean, it probably wouldn't be the end of the world because it still has like a watery sort of wavy effect. So not a big deal, but just for really, really flat pieces, this is a lot more lightweight than a silicone mat, so the Isomalt can really push it down flat. But with experimenting, you can definitely make that work.
It might be nice.
Yeah, it definitely can be. Definitely. Okay, so see how I just, I'm going very freeform with this, okay? Which, you know, I'm trying to make it, my brain wants to make it perfect, but I'm trying to make myself keep it more freeform because it really does make just a kind of a nice subtle background piece, and then we're going to put most of the detail into the actual jellyfish. So we're going to move that guy over and let that cool at room temperature for about, I would say, 20 minutes or so, depending on the temperature of your room. You never want to put your ice melt in the fridge or the freezer because the moisture and the condensation will affect it, so you don't want to affect that too much and make it sticky. Okay? Alright, so I'm just heating up my next color of Isomalt, and that is going to be our pink. So if you're following along, go ahead and heat up your pink and while we get everything else ready. If you are following along, make sure that you write in the comments. I would love to see, or if you're planning to watch and do it afterwards, or just watch and learn. Yeah, I'm just reading through the comments a little bit. What do you guys think? Are you guys enjoying all the demos today? I've been watching all of them, and there just is so much information. I love seeing everybody's work and all the amazing skill that is in this event today. Make sure if you did miss any of them that you go back and watch the demos, because there's already been a whole bunch this morning that was just loaded with incredible information from all these awesome artists. So, yay! Hi, Alicia. Hi, Jessie. All right, so like I said, I'm just heating up my pink in the microwave right now. And don't worry, because remember, if you are following along with this, you can go back and watch it. I'm just going to kind of, you know, do each step consecutively, but if you get a little bit behind or you're working on one step longer, don't worry about it, because the beauty of this is that you're working in your own kitchen, you're working in your own environment. There's no time limit. You can go back and, you know, tweak things and change things, or you can work on it as long as you want, and go back if you missed something or you wanted to brush up on something. So that makes it really, really fun. There's no stress. It's just about having fun with sugar today.
Lindsay said she'll get a few supplies and she'll try this at home.
Yay, I'm so excited. Make sure to tag me in pictures, guys. If you are making this project, I would love to see what you guys make. It will be really, really awesome to see your interpretation. All right, so while that is finishing coming to a boil, I'm going to grab my next tools because we're going to pour the dome for the jellyfish. So like we were talking about before, I have my dome former mold. This one does have a hole in the bottom, so you'll see there's kind of a mini dome within the dome, and that is going to give us something to hold on to as we're unmolding, and it makes it bend a lot easier too, because it has that open space. So when you unmold, since this is a pretty hard silicone, you'll definitely want that little bit of wiggle room to be able to unmold it cleanly. All right, let me check on my Isomalt.
Lori said she's going to do it later.
Yay!
And Brooke can't wait to see. And Valerie was excited to see you back, and she really wants the kit, and this will be her first time to play with Isomalt.
Oh, you definitely have to do it. You're gonna love it. Isomalt is just so unique and so versatile, and there's so much you can do with it.
And Sabine says she's trying to play along.
Yay!
And Lori has her mom with her.
Hi, Lori's mom! All right, so you see how I have the Isomalt here come to a boil. I, again, don't want to use it like this, especially for this technique. We want it a little on the thicker side because we want this to drip. So I'm going to put this off to the side and just let it settle. I'll put it somewhere you guys can kind of see it while I get this ready. But we want that to settle, one, so it's not boiling, but then we want to make sure that it is not going to be too thin and runny when we pour it. All right, so for pouring this, I'm going to go on another Teflon mat just so it's easy to move around. But this you could do on a silicone mat, on a piece of foil, on anything that you want to. It's just to catch the drips as we pour over this. So whatever you want to use that's non-stick and that won't melt from the heat, you can use underneath. Now, I put on the supply list that you're going to need something tall to hold the dome former up. So this could be a water bottle, this could be a tall skinny mold, maybe if you have one of our like mini liquor bottle molds, you could use that. Mine does fit into the little inside dome here. I'm using just like a little travel bottle filled with water. You want something that's not pressurized, so like I wouldn't use the edible glaze spray because if too much heat gets on that, obviously it's pressurized, you don't want that, it's compressed. So you don't want an aerosol or anything, but you want something that that is going to be a little bit high that can fit. It's okay if it doesn't fit in this little dome. You can have something that just goes to the outside of it if it's a wider thing that you're setting it on. You just want it to be skinnier than the dome so that when you pour, it doesn't stick to whatever is supporting your dome, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to put mine on a little bottle. Now, the taller that you make that, the longer the tendrils are going to be that's going to drip down from it. So just keep that in mind with the size of your base pieces that we poured. If the tendrils are a lot longer than the base pieces, you may have to give it a little haircut, but that's fine if you need to. It's no big deal. All right, I can see that my Isomalt is almost done boiling. It still has a couple little bubbles that are moving and popping. So I'm going to give that another second to cool. And then I'm going to just kind of center this on my mat and get it ready.
So Lynn's trying to catch up.
Awesome.
And Rebecca is doing it later. She has her new airbrush to play with too.
Yay! I can't wait to see what you do with your airbrush.
And Alicia says, I don't know how your nails are so nice.
My nails?
Not usually.
They're not usually, no. I try and clean them up a little bit for lives, but they are not usually. I usually have color stained all over my hands, especially lately. All right, so I just set that onto my support while I'm letting that cool, and we're going to pour over it. I know it's kind of hard for you guys to see it from like the right angles right now. You're just going to see it from the top, but I promise I'm not going to move this as it's pouring. I'm going to leave it be, and then before I unmold the whole thing, I will tilt it so that you can see what it looked like, but there's not really that much to it. We're just going to pour over and let it drip, so not too much technical that you need to see up close, but I will tilt it when it's cool. Obviously not when it's hot. I don't want to touch it, but I will show you so you guys can just see for your reference. All right. Now, remember too, you can mix in your own colors into Isomalt if you want to. Of course, I am partial to my Simi Color Splash airbrush colors, but you can use any type of airbrush color that is going to be a water or alcohol base to get this transparent effect. You can also use powdered colors, so luster dust or petal dust if you want to. You just don't want to mix in gel colors because gel color will break down the Isomalt and not allow it to dry properly. So just make sure that you're using either a water-based for transparent see-through effects, or you're using a powder for more solid effects that'll come out opaque but still shiny and not see-through. So it gives you kind of two different looks. If you want to, you can also at that point mix in some flavoring. Oil-based flavorings work best because they're going to be the most potent. So you can mix in a couple drops of oil-based flavoring into your Isomalt. Whenever you have to mix it to mix your own colors or mix in your own flavorings, remember how I said I never stir the Isomalt? Obviously you have to if you're mixing in your own colors and flavors. So you always, after you're done mixing it, you would put it back in the microwave and bring it back to a boil, and that is just going to make sure that all the bubbles that were mixed in rise because hot air rises, and it's going to make all the bubbles pop and leave you with crystal clear Isomalt again. All right.
Sydney,
Almost there.
Michelle is asking about the Teflon mat.
Yes.
If they crease, do you need to be stored flat? But we put them inside a tube, right?
Yeah, I roll them and I put like a rubber band around them when they're not in use. When we ship them, we roll them up, just nice and smooth. They can crease. I find though, because they have a slight woven texture on them, I torch the back of my pieces anyway to get rid of that so it doesn't have a fabric sort of look. So if it does get a little crease, if it gets bent or anything, it's really not a big deal because you can just torch it away from the Isomalt if it leaves a slight crease in the Isomalt surface. But they do crease slightly, so you just want to make sure that you leave them flat or you leave them rolled up. All right. All right, this is perfect. So my Isomalt has thickened slightly, so it's not super, super watery and runny. It is nice and thick and more syrupy. The thicker that you do this, the thicker the tendrils are going to be, because if you think about pouring water, it's going to be more drippy, right? It's going to have individual like raindrops. If you think about pouring syrup, it's going to be really thick and viscous and kind of gloopy, technical term there, and it's going to leave more strands and streaks. I'm going to try and do this on one pour and not do multiple layers, but again, you can experiment with it and see what look you like the best. But I just have my bottle sitting underneath of my dome. Make sure that's nice and level, and we're just going to pour over top of it. I'm going to go really slow with this because this bottle is pretty thick plastic, but I don't want to put too much heat on it if a whole bunch of Isomalt pools on the bottom and it end up melting through it, so just keep that in mind of whatever you're using. I've used this one a couple times for this sort of technique, so it should be fine. Famous last words, right? But we also don't want to, pour too much over it anyway, so we just want to go nice and slow, and it's going to cool as it goes on as well. So I'm just kind of guiding it to each side. It's okay if it doesn't run all the way to the bottom of the sphere, because it'll give it sort of a cool look. but we do want to cover it as much as we can. Okay, if any of the drips kind of get towards your bottle, you can use a little tool or a spatula to just melt them away, or you can move it afterwards too. All right, and I'm basically just going to let that cool in place like that, and we're not going to touch it. I am going to move it out of the way, but we're not going to touch it. I just drizzled over, and if you guys have done or seen those videos of the, what do they call those, the poured cakes with all the ripples of color over top of them.
Drip cake?
Yeah, like the drip cakes or the really glossy ones that they do. The word is out of my brain right now, but the really glossy cakes that they do. It's kind of the same effect where they like scrape the bottom of it, except we're not going to scrape the bottom. We're going to leave it be, and that's going to give us these really cool sort of frozen in place drips and tendrils that are going off the edge of it right now. I can't touch it right now to show you guys, but I promise I will tilt it in just a few minutes when it's cool enough, and that way you can kind of see what I'm talking about. It stopped dripping, so I'm just going to move my bottle away from that hot isomalt, so I just kind of slid it away from some of those puddles it was touching. And then we're just going to let that cool. It's a pretty thin layer, so it's not going to take very long for it to cool, maybe about 10 minutes or so, depending on the temperature of your room. But we'll put that off to the side, and then I'll unmold it in just a few minutes.
The sides to me look like there was an oil lamp, and the oil would go down the sides.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lady in the middle. It's
yeah.
like a light from the 70s.
That's cool.
The mirror glaze.
Yes, mirror glaze. Thank you, guys. Mirror glaze cake. You know how they pour it over it and then they like scrape the bottom edge? It's like that, but we're not scraping the bottom edge. We're just leaving it, and then all of those cool drips are going to become part of the tentacles of the jellyfish. Okay, so I'm going to carefully move it. If you can pour it somewhere that you don't have to move it, that's even better, but the drips are pretty much cool now, so I'm just going to slide it off to the side to let the dome cool all the way. Very gently. All right. So while everything is cooling and drying, we are going to start pulling our Isomalt. We are going to pull the pink, so whatever you have left over of that pink is what we're going to cool down and turn into the clay. Would you mind plugging in my heat lamp for me, please? Mm-hmm. I am going to layer a second silicone mat onto my Silpat mat. Yeah, the cord should be right here. It may have to kind of suspend up a little bit. I have a whole jumble of cords here going on with all my lights and computer and everything, so perfect. Thank you. All right.
See if anything shuts off.
All right. Nope, nothing's falling, nothing's shutting off, so we're good. All right, so I just had Mom plug in my 250-watt heat lamp, so that's what we're going to use to keep everything warm. But if you don't have the heat lamp, it's totally fine. You can do this without it, which I'll show you once we get into it. But I did layer a second Silpat mat, or silicone mat, onto my Silpat mat, just to keep the heat a little bit lifted from my metal table so it doesn't insulate as much heat. And that way when I pour out the Isomalt onto this mat, as I'm about to do, it just keeps it from getting too hot, because what can happen is silicone has pores just like skin, so when it gets really too hot, it actually opens up the pores, and if the pores open up too much from being insulated too much heat, or maybe you had a hot spot in the microwave, what it will do is it will open up the pores, and then the Isomalt gets stuck down in them. So you don't want that. If you get a little stuck spot, it does come off really easily with water. It's not a big deal. It usually doesn't happen in the same spot twice, but if you notice that everything is releasing except for one little spot, that's usually what happen. So I find when doing a double layer of mats like this, it definitely helps. Okay, so I'm just slowly folding this back and forth. So I'm lining up the edges of the puddle when I fold, so this edge is going to fold directly to line up with that edge. I'm not stopping before it or going past it. That's just going to keep it all as contained as possible. And I'm just going to alternate which sides I'm doing. And eventually this is all going to come together into a ball, and it's going to stop sticking. So it will kind of be like dough. It will tell you when it's ready because it all comes together into one mass of Isomalt.
So Alicia's wondering, what's your most favorite piece you've ever created and why?
That is a very good question. I don't know. Let's think about that for a second. I definitely think lately my favorite piece has been my dragon for my next Zoom class. I really love how that came out, the dragon head for my Sculpting Basics Zoom class, which I'll show you guys in a little bit. I have him back there. Another one that I really liked is I did a floating barn cake that's being like sucked up by a giant tornado that I did for the Simi Sweet Adventures that I did in with the Property Brothers for their online platform. That was a really fun cake. I have the video for that is on my YouTube channel. I did it a few years ago. That was super duper fun. I did a giant Isomalt Tornado. Alright. So see how that's just all coming together? Another thing I like to do is just move over the silicone mat to a cool spot as I'm pulling. And you'll see I'm going a little bit faster now, and that is all pulling together and just helping it to release a little bit easier. That beautiful bright pink. Alright. So I'm going to keep going until it's not sticky anymore. So you can see I just tried to pick it up, but it was still sticking to the mat. But now when I try and pick it up, it is not sticking. So we're going to stretch and fold this a few times. And just kind of cool it down. So it kind of is up to you how many times you pull this or stretch and fold it. What it's doing is cooling this off by folding in cool air, and it's toughening it up a little bit. So it's making the texture thicker and harder, and that way when you go to sculpt it, it holds its shape better, the firmer the texture is. So it's kind of up to you if you like to work with something a little more pliable or a little bit more firm. But you'll kind of get the feel for it. The main thing is just to remember to only fold it in one direction, so I'm not twisting it or kneading it like you would fondant in gum paste. I'm just stretching it, folding in half, and then I roll it every few folds just to help cool it down and to help it all bond together. You'll see that beautiful satin finish and those really pretty streaks it's getting from all that air.
Rebecca was going to guess that you were going to say your Edgar Allan Poe bust that you made out of Isomalt.
I do love the Edgar Allan Poe bust. That's another good one. And I like my Frankenstein, who's behind me on the shelf here.
You did Einstein and chocolate.
I did do, yeah, I like Einstein too. I like doing faces. I don't do them that often, but I really like doing like caricatures. So those ones are definitely up there too. All right. Okay, so I can feel my Isomalt is a lot firmer now. You see how it's not just immediately turning to a blob. It has definitely a lot more body to it, but it is still quite pliable, so I can still sculpt it and stretch it very easily. So we'll put that underneath my 250 watt heat lamp. So again, that was kind of a crash course in pulling and everything, but if you want more in-depth on the basics, it is on my YouTube channel. So you can see kind of the whole entire process from start to finish really in depth. Let's see, I'm going to test my jellyfish. He's not quite cool enough yet, so I'm not going to take him off the form just yet, but we definitely will take him off here in a minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the tentacles that are going to go inside the dome former. So if you want to wait until it comes off the dome former to do this, you can, just for sizing, but we kind of know the size we want to make this, coordinating with our piece that we're standing up. So I'm going to start at least on some of the tentacles for it. We're going to need our little rolling pin for this, and we're also going to need our scissors. Okay. Now whenever I cut off a piece from underneath the lamp, I'm going to cut from the smooth side. So you see when I fold it over, there's a side here that's smooth and there's a side that has wrinkles in it. You always want to cut from the smooth side. So I'm just going to cut a little piece here. Put the rest under the heat lamp. It already kind of cut into a little bit of like a lemon shape that's slightly elongated, so I'm going to go with that and just make a pretty thick tube to start. You don't want to roll it too much, so you see I only did it once or twice because your hands are actually cooling this down. We want to leave some body to it before we roll over it. So I'm going to roll and just press from the center up and then the center down. You can only go over with the rolling pin 1 or 2 times max because this is cooling it down as well, so make sure that you're pushing pretty hard. It doesn't need to be paper thin or anything, but we just want something that's more flat. And then we're going to start stretching this out. Okay, if it still feels too pliable and it's falling and stretching the way that you don't want it to, just kind of press it into the mat to cool it down. You can do both sides and that will firm it up a little. If it feels too tough, you may want to take your torch and just lightly torch over the whole thing to make it pliable again. Now this is an impressionistic jellyfish, so I'm just going for the essence of the look. So I'm going to cut one side at an angle to bring it to a point, just to have a finished edge. Okay, this little piece I'm not going to put back under the lamp. I'm going to put it into my silicone bowl with the liquid Isomalt and melt it back to a liquid. Because the the lamp is really good for heating things up that are already warm, but it's not good for heating things up from scratch when they've already gotten too cool. Okay, this is getting a little bit hard just as I'm talking, so I'm just going to lightly torch it. Give it about 5 or 10 seconds before I flip it and torch the underside to make sure it stays even. Give that a few seconds. And you can do that again if you need to, but I can feel now that it is good. So I'm just going to kind of zigzag this accordion style. You can get really creative with this if you want to. You can get really funky. You can leave it more perfect. You can lay it over a form, but I'm just going to kind of crinkle it up. Give it a slight accordion fold. You can even have it kind of touch in some spots if you want to, but it will pretty much permanently touch wherever you stick it together, so just keep that in mind. And then I'm going to grab my little fan once I like the shape and cool this down. This is just going to be the first one, so I'm not really worrying too much. It's okay if they're uneven, it's okay if the width is not perfectly flat all the way down, because you're really going to be crumpling these up a lot, and you're not going to be able to tell. A little bit of variegation is actually best, because then each one doesn't look exactly the same. Alright.
Jackie says she needs a little bit more practice on the prepping and pulling.
Yeah, the prep is really a lot of any project. As I'm sure you guys know, it takes just as much prep work as it does for the actual project. So just, yeah, practicing those little key things definitely helps. Give you a nice foundation. Okay, so I'm just cooling that off until it is pretty solid so I can set it down and not worry about it flattening or falling or losing its shape. Okay, and then this is going to be the first one, so I can build on top of that. I can make them shorter, I can make them longer, or whatever I like. But first we're going to take off our dome since it is ready now, so that I can kind of size it now. Okay, so I told you guys I would show you before I take this off what it looks like from the side. So I'm going to tilt it so you guys can see it did just kind of break off from there, but you can see that's what it's kind of going. You can see the little drips. I didn't go all the way to the edge of the dome former, like I said. That's fine. Okay, so those pieces should come right off of the Teflon or silicone mat or foil that you're working with, and you can remelt them later. And then we're going to kind of grab it in places that doesn't have the little tendrils. Flip it over. You can set them down if you need to. And then we're going to use that inner dome, that little hollow area, to use our fingers and start stretching this. So I'm going to hold it by the edges. I don't want to get too many fingerprints on the top, even though we will be glazing it. And I'm just going to pull away. So I'm pulling backwards and kind of pushing inwards on the inside to release this. And I'm going to do it in little bits all the way around. It's okay if some of the tendrils snap. But once you do that a couple times from different angles, you can see it comes right off. And you may have more of a jagged edge like this one. You may have a more perfect edge. There's no right or wrong to it. The cool thing is that these come out different every single time. But that's just going to add a little bit to the pieces.
Said with the grease ball, should it just slide right off?
Yeah, it should just slide right off, or if you're using the foil layer, you should be able to just peel the foil right off. Okay, so that is going to be the dome for our jellyfish. If you're using the silicone former, you may notice it's a little bit cloudy. It's not super duper see-through. Potentially you could torch that away, but I don't want to because I don't want to accidentally make the shape go away, so I'm just going to leave it, and when we glaze it, that will fix. But we're just going to leave that guy off to the side and start to make some more tentacles for it. Okay, so that's going to go into the center. And we'll just continue. Now you can go as crazy with this as you want. I'm obviously don't want to take up too much of your time because you got a whole bunch more demos to look at today and to watch. So I'm just going to kind of speed through making a few of these. But yeah, I do have till quarter after, but we still got our airbrushing. So I want to make sure we have lots of time for each step. So I'm just going to kind of make a few, but you can go as crazy as you want to with however much Isomalt you have. Okay, and I'm just going to continue. Now, one of these, it could have been the first one, it can be one of the other ones, it doesn't matter. I am going to add a little foot to it. So you see how I curved the top so that when I put it up against the dome, it has more surface area than if it was just a straight edge touching the dome. So I'm going to give it a little kind of a foot there. And then I'm going to start to kind of build these together. You can make them individually and then put them together, but I like to really build them while they're warm so that they all flow nicely and I can tweak them as much as I want. So I'm just going to torch to stick them together.
Tammy Varela says very cool. Her jellyfish was also very cool.
Yeah, Tammy Varela did a really cool live on her version of a jellyfish too. It was so funny that we both decided to do jellyfishes pretty much at the same time. And hers is a really, really cool technique too. So make sure that you go check that out because she has a little bit different way that she does it. And that gives you, different options because there's always different ways and interpretations to go into different projects depending on what you like and different styles and looks that you're going for. Okay, so of course the more that you cut off, the bigger the tentacle here is going to be. And the reason that we roll this out when it's nice and thick and then stretch it out is because if you stretched out a skinny little tube and then tried to roll it flat, it will cool too fast. So if you roll it out while it's still pretty chunky and thick, it gives you more time to work with it until it cools down. Okay. Remember, the more that you squish these up, the shorter they're getting. So if you want longer pieces, try and leave them a little bit more stretched out rather than super duper folded. Okay. I'm going to try and make this 3D, so I'm not just going to work flat. I'm going to flip it over and just kind of hold it in place. So see how I'm basically just making one big clump. And again, you can vary around with like the sizes if you want to, so make some skinny ones and some thicker ones. There's different species of jellyfish that you can, try and replicate specifically if you want a very, kind of indicators of which species it is, if you want a specific one, but I'm just going for impressionistic, almost more of like a SpongeBob jellyfish, really. Alright, so hold this up.
Lori said the dome mold is really neat, and you make nests and everything out of it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at this upside down. This would make a really cool bowl. You can make a really cool nest. You could drizzle over it with a spatula instead of doing the, using it as a solid piece. There's really a lot of different things that you can do with this guy. All right. I'm going to make one more that's a little bit longer because he's a little bit short right now. So I'm going to make a skinny one just to add some length. Oh, I'm running out of room here. Let me see.
Lindsay was wondering how long can it cool before the blowtorch wouldn't be enough to soften for molding?
It depends on the temperature of your room and how thick your isomalt is. Usually I say if it still has some give to it, if it still has some movement to it, but it just definitely feels like it could snap, it's fine to be reheated. If it gets to the point where you try and bend it and it really just feels like it could snap at any second, that's usually too far gone. And you could bring it back with the torch, but it's going to be a lot harder and a lot more inconsistent. When the isomalt has some heat to it to begin with, it takes the heat a lot more evenly, if that makes sense. So if it has still some warmth and some give to it, usually you're fine to go ahead and reheat it, but you'll kind of learn, depending on the temperature of your room, how long you have until that happens. It kind of, depends on your environment a lot and how thick your pieces are.
Carrie was wondering, with everything you pull, would it be easier to roll it to start?
You can definitely roll if you want to, and roll it more into tubes instead of ribbons. It's kind of stylistic. Whatever's up to you.
And Lynn says sails just got a lot easier.
Definitely, these would make really cool, perfectly rounded sails. Because the thing with making sails when you just put it over like a form on a silicone mat is they get a little bit pointy, which looks really cool, but it's definitely not going to have that bowl look as much as doing something like this.
What about pouring different colors?
Oh yeah, you could layer different colors over it too, for sure. Because if you let this cool and then you poured another color over it, it would have body to it, so it would actually look like another thick layer on top. If you poured them one right after the other while they're all hot, then it would marbleize more into a tie-dye flat look rather than keeping separation from each other. All right, so I'm pretty happy with this. I'm going to go ahead and stop with my tentacles here. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to only lightly torch the inside of the dome, just because warm sticks to warm better than warm to cool, but we don't want to do too much because it will melt. And then we're really, 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 really melt these guys.
What about the grease from the bowl?
If you torch on the inside, it should melt away that grease. So if you had a little bit of grease if you're using a bowl, when you lightly torch like I just did, it will take it away. Okay, and then I just stuck that right in. You can kind of see it from the top. Don't let it push through, so I'll use my silicone mat to flatten it back down, because like I said, that layer is really thin, so if it gets too hot, it definitely can push through the dome. We'll just let him sit upside down for a minute.
Nancy said, I don't know why I'm holding my breath.
It's a little bit nerve-wracking at first, but once you get into it, it should work.
You can melt it.
Yeah, and you can melt it down. That's the beauty of Isomalt, is there's no waste. Even if you don't like something, even if it's just for practice, you can definitely melt it down you know, as much as you need to, and there's no limit to how many times you can melt it down. All right. So I'm just cooling it upside down right now using the flat of the mat to make sure it doesn't lose its shape from heating or from that heat touching the inside of the dome. Even if you had a little bit of a funky spot, you could cover it with something. You can put, you know, a little fish or a little tendril. Those little tendrils that I made for the tentacles, also in different colors, work really good as seagrass. So if you want to add some foliage around the piece to make it look like an ocean floor, that would be really nice. Exactly, melt the evidence. Alright, so here is our jellyfish. It looks a little different from different angles, so you'll have to pick your favorite. But you can see I just attached it right to the top. And there we go. Okay, so you can leave him upside down or on his side. I usually pick a spot that some of the tendrils broke off, so I don't really have any of the thin wispies on this side. So I'll just let him rest over there. Now we're going to unmold our base pieces and attach him on before we do some airbrushing. Alright. So bring these back over here, and they should just peel off when they're cool, so they just come right off. You can see this side is a little bit more matte than this side that's super shiny. That's just because, again, of that texture of the mat that you were on. So you can melt that away if you want to, which is what we're going to do. And I just removed the flex form there, so see how that gave us our nice flat edge, so that when we attach these on, it sits flat. And now I'll show you torching away some of that texture. So we're just going to basically go on the side that was touching the mat, and I'm going to torch. I'm just going to do half of this, and it doesn't take very much, but I want to show you the difference in how it looks once that cools for a second. I'm going to do all of this big one here. Make sure you don't torch near the tendrils of the jellyfish because they're so thin that they definitely will melt and dissolve from any little bit of heat. So I'm just going over this whole thing on the side that was touching the mat to get rid of that texture, but if you like the texture, you could leave it. Another thing that you can do is you can, at this point, I would do it in smaller sections and heat it a little more, but you can take a silicone impression mat. So like you can take one of Bubbles or something like that and impression it if you wanted to give it even more texture and detail. Okay, so I'm going to show you the difference here. This is the side that I just torched. This is the side that was not torched yet. So you see how it looks a little bit frosted and cloudy on the side that was not torched? And then this side here looks like real clear glass. So you could leave the frosted look if you wanted to, but I really like that super, super intense reflective look. This also melts any bubbles that may have stuck to the mat. Again, I don't really worry too much about bubbles because for this piece it really fits in with the theme. Alright, so I'm just going to let those cool for a few seconds before we put it together and do our airbrushing. And I'm probably going to unplug the lamp because I want to just have a little bit cooler environment over here so that as we're putting things together you don't want any excess heat. Thank you very much. Alright, so just kind of using the fan. Now, if you didn't have that heat lamp, remember that you can take your Isomalt and just fold it in your silicone mat and put it back in the microwave for 5-second intervals whenever it gets too tough to work with. So if you're making your tentacles and you feel like the Isomalt is just going to crack, it's not stretching or rolling out or bending, you can just heat it in only 5 seconds at a time because you're not trying to get it back to a liquid, you're only trying to get it back to a more pliable state. And then just fold it on your mat again until it all comes together and it's nice and even again and it releases from the mat to be able to pull more. Again, that little, you can see that on video on my basic series if you want a visual of that.
Sid, what's your roller made out of?
That is PVC, my super fancy, super expensive roller. I like PVC for Isomalt because we do use a lot of heat and fire. I don't want to accidentally blow torch on one of my expensive nice rolling pins, you know, that I use for rolling out fondant and things. Plus you can get it in any size that you want and thickness that you want for different projects, and it's food safe because it's for, you know, water, for drinking water, so. I just use cut up pieces of PVC. But if you just have a regular like plastic rolling pin that you use for fondant, those will work fine too. Just be careful with them. Alright. So my pieces are now completely cooled. So you can see when that whole piece is torched, it really is just like glass. You can see right through it. So I'm going to melt a little bit of my clear to use as glue to put this together. And again, we're using all clear for this except for the jellyfish because we're going to airbrush on the backdrop. And we're actually going to also airbrush on the jellyfish, but I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do that so that we can make it stand out onto the pink as well as onto the clear, just potentially or essentially white base. All right, I'm going to move some stuff out of the way while that's heating just to give us a little bit of room for our airbrushing. All right, you guys have any questions so far? How's your pieces going if you're following along? Let me know. Okay, glue's almost melted. So you just want to plan before you put it together because once it's stuck, it is stuck, so I don't want to just kind of go into it blindly. I want to have a little bit of a plan. You can set your big piece back a little bit from the center if you want, since the jellyfish is going to be hanging on the front and you don't want it to be falling forward from the weight of it. So if you want to add more of a foot to the front of the piece here rather than having it right in the center, that can help with balance. But the jellyfish isn't that heavy, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal. I guess it depends on how heavy and thick you make the tendrils and the tentacles and everything. Okay, so I just melted a little bit more Isomalt for the clear here. Let's see, Carrie asked, Sydney, did you use your new range to color the Isomalt? Yes, so if you got the accessory kit, it came already pre-colored because we have the colors already standard, but you can use our red, our candy apple red, because we don't have a pink yet in the kit. Hopefully we will at some point, but right now we have the red, but it actually works perfect to make pink if you just do a tiny little toothpick drip, so you can use that. And I'll be using the blue of the Color Splash too once we go to airbrush. All right, so my piece won't fit into the bowl to dip it in the glue, so I'm going to pour out just a little kind of trench over here to dip into. So a little puddle. We're going to dip it, so I'm facing the front upwards, and I'm going to kind of catch and push the glue onto the back. I know it's clear, so it doesn't really matter because you're going to see it on the back through it, but it just helps a little. Now here's where we want to make sure that it's standing up straight. So I am going to use my fan to help speed up the cooling process, but I'm going to look at it not just from here where I'm working, I'm looking at it from the side as well to make sure that it is nice and straight as it cools down. We don't want any crooked jellyfish here. Alright, I'm just going to support that using my little fan. If you don't have the fan, you'll see me using it a lot, and I just like it because I'm impatient, but if you don't have a fan, it's not a big deal. You can just kind of support things or prop them up against something until it cools, but the fan definitely helps. Alright, so cooling, cooling, cooling. Until it is cool enough to hold its shape, and then we'll do kind of the same thing to attach the jellyfish. You could either use liquid Isomalt or you can use the torch, whatever is easier for you. I'm going to see once I put it up and what angle it's at, which one I feel like using today. Usually I'll use liquid Isomalt if it's something heavier that I'm worried and I want to add extra glue. If it's something really lightweight, you can just use the torch. I'll probably use the liquid Isomalt for this, just so it doesn't hurt the structure of the piece because it will warm up the whole thing, so I don't want it to bend or the back of it to flatten or anything from torching it. Alright, so this feels pretty solid. I'm going to give it another few seconds because I want to make sure that it is before we put our jellyfish on. And I know you guys are, again, looking straight down, but when it's for every step, I'm going to hold it up so you guys can see, and I'm going to change the angle a little bit when we go to airbrush so you can see what I'm doing better. Alright, letting it cool. Let's see, Carrie asks, can you use freeze spray like you do with chocolate? That's a really good question. Freeze spray actually does not work with Isomalt because Isomalt is very, very sensitive to temperatures. So if it's warm, so if you're gluing and you go and use freeze spray on it, it is going to shatter the Isomalt because it's like glass. If it goes from one temperature extreme to the next, it's going to shatter. So don't use freeze spray. You can use canned air because it's not actually frozen, it's just cool air that's directed in a certain place, but that can be a little bit too harsh. And also canned air is not food safe, so I just like to use my little fan because it's kind of foolproof. It's just a little battery operated fan. Alright, so that should be good. Now I'm going to figure out where I want my jellyfish, so let me hold this up on its side so you guys can see it first. Let me try and get it down here. Do a little pan of it over here away from the jellyfish. Okay. And you'll see a couple little fingerprints on it from me holding it, but when we glaze it, that will go away. Alright, so now I'm going to figure out where the piece is going to be sitting. And the more sections that I can have attached, the better. So if I can not only attach the dome, but I can attach the one or two of the tentacles on, that will be best. Alright, so I'm just going to take, and I'm going to reheat this just a little.
So Mina said that she's having trouble, the sound seems low. Does anybody else have it? I don't have it on my end.
Oh, yeah, does the volume seem a little bit low, guys? I have it all the way up, so hopefully it's not too bad.
Computer does it a little different.
Yeah, definitely. Alright, so I didn't heat it up till it's boiling because I don't want it too hot that it just melts everything it comes in contact with. But I'm going to use my little tool again and just clean off the pink. And I'm just going to spread some glue on the spots where it's going to be sitting. Okay, so mostly here. Very carefully without getting you. Remember to wear your gloves. I'm just spreading a little bit on the jellyfish. And then I'll probably go back and spread some onto the tentacles once I have those. And then just stick it to the side.
A couple people said it was a little low.
A little bit low.
Can you raise your microphone?
Yeah, I can in just a second once this guy's on there.
You can't do it while your hands are full?
No, I need a couple more hands, then I could. Alright. I'm going to drip a little bit more glue down in there too. Just to make sure, since it is a little bit sticky in here today from the rain. I just want to make sure that guy's going to be nice and secure. So I'm kind of letting the glue drip down the back of it so that you're not going to see it from the front.
Sidney Grace asks, when she's used Isomalt in the past, it yellows over the time. Is it normal?
Generally, Isomalt won't yellow after it's cooked, but in the beginning when you're cooking it, it can yellow if you bring the temperature up a little bit too much. So you just want to make sure that you're going in really small intervals when you're heating it. And that way it doesn't get the temperature up too much. It can also be the kind of Isomalt you're using too. We have ours, you know, we've tested it and it's super duper crystal clear, but other ones, depending on where you get it from, can cut the Isomalt with fillers that can cause it to turn yellow too.
I think too if you over microwave it.
Yeah, if you over microwave it, of course, yeah, it definitely will burn it. So just being careful about that is going to be key. So I'm just taking my time with this. I'm letting it sit on there with the fan and just really supporting it until it is all completely stuck and anchored. It's really good to just take your time with this, and you don't want to let up on it too soon because you don't want him falling off. The name of this is floating Isomalt jellyfish, not falling Isomalt jellyfish, so just take your time. Alright, I have a hand now, so I'm going to move my mic up a little bit. See if that helps, guys. Hello, hello, test one. What do you guys think? Is that better? Alright, so I'm just going to jiggle this a little bit, see how he's doing, how he's feeling. I think he's alright. Okay, I'm just going to move the fan to a different spot and still kind of spot him. I'm not really holding it, but I'm just spotting it for a few extra minutes. Because sometimes when you let go, it looks okay at first and then it slowly starts sagging down, so you just want to keep an eye on him. And then we're going to do our airbrushing here for the final few minutes we have. But any other questions? Okay, everybody says this better. Good. I usually have my mic a little bit lower because I don't want my hair to hit it, but I have my hair up today, so. All right. Okay, so that guy's on there. I'm not going to tilt him up because I don't want to put him on his side, but I'm going to move the camera a little bit so that you guys can see him. Okay, it's a little bit different layout than the first one, but of course it's art, so if I wanted to, you know, add in some other pieces to balance it out or anything like that, and you guys are going to be looking more straight on at yours rather than watching yourself do it through a screen to make sure you guys can see like I'm doing. First I'm going to tilt my camera up just to show you guys what it looks like from the side. Alright, so let me grab him. Ta-da! He's just floating away over there. Okay, and now I'm gonna change the camera angle up a little bit for airbrushing, so just bear with me for a second.
Oh, this is a great question. Lindsay wants to know if you ever had something fall and shatter.
Oh, never. Nope, nope. I am just the perfect Isomalt artist and nothing is ever broken. No, I break things almost every single day, especially in progress pieces. That's just part of the game. It's sugar, right? It breaks. Nothing we can do about it, but keep going. Again, that's the beauty of Isomalt.
Michelle Johnson was wondering if you don't have the dome former, can you use a balloon if you want to do the dome?
You could use a water balloon, yeah. You just want to make sure it's not going to roll away on you. But you definitely could. Alright, I'm just changing the angle a little bit, guys, so just give me 1 second so you guys can see a little bit better for airbrushing. Okay. Alright, so let me go down a little bit more. There we go. Okay, you guys can see the messy underneaths of my table now with all my past pieces down there. Alright, so that's not a bad angle. I'm going to leave it there. Okay, so we're going to be airbrushing now. I am using my Dinky Doodle airbrush. That is my absolute favorite airbrush. And as we were talking about earlier, I do have a sale going on right now. If you get the Dinky Doodle airbrush kit with or without my new set of colors, you get into my free Airbrushing Basics Zoom class, which is for any skill level, which is pretty fun. If you've gotten one from my website in the past, you can email me and I'll get you in the class too. But I have my nice Dinky Doodle airbrush here. Let me grab my colors. So I'm going to be using blue and base white, and there's a reason for that. I'm going to first be using the blue by itself, so this is ocean blue. I'm just going to be using it straight out of the bottle, and that is going to be transparent because airbrush colors are transparent, so they're going to give you a nice see-through, watery glass look. But I want to highlight on the jellyfish with some blue too, but if I layer blue over pink, it's just going to give me either purple, of course, or it's going to kind of muddle the colors because they're both see-through, so it's not going to pop as well. So we're actually going to mix in some white after that to give me an opaque paint instead of a transparent paint like all the colors start out as, because it is water-based. So I'm going to do that now and explain it a little bit more in depth so it makes more sense. I'll try and talk over the airbrush compressor here, but I'm just going to put a couple drops in. If you wanted a lighter blue, you can thin this with dilution solution to make a lighter tone. Let me grab a paper towel here so I can test it. Airbrushing is so easy, guys. I use it all the time. It makes things go so quick and fast. So I'm just going to try and do this. Now I'm facing away from me, so I apologize if I get anything out of the shot, but I'm just going to test it first on a paper towel, make sure it's nice and good. And then I'm just going to go around the edges. I'm probably going to spray my whole studio because I don't have anything behind this, but I'm going really up close, so I'm going to try not to spray myself or anything. And I'm just going to do the edges of the piece. So I'm going to go all the way around. And you know what? You guys can see through it, so I'm actually going to spray the back of the piece instead of the front, okay? So if anything, you guys are going to turn blue, but I'll try and avoid that. Okay, so see how I'm just doing it really lightly. I do have the... Oh, do I have to move over?
Not so the black.
There we go. Sorry about that. So I'm just doing light coats. The key with airbrushing and painting on Isomalt is light layers. I do have the compressor turned down to the lowest setting so that it's not overspraying everywhere. Can you guys see how easy and quick that is? It's just instantly giving it some color.
Somebody's asking about the metallics through the airbrush, but the ones that we will be getting can do those, right?
Yes, this one is the like medium-size airbrush gun, but Dinky Doodle also has a very small one for very fine points and a very large one that you can actually airbrush cocoa butter through. It's such a large nozzle, and that one you can do more metallics. But with this one, you can do metallics. I'd probably thin them a little bit with water or dilution solution just to make sure they go through nicely.
You have to clean it really good.
Yeah, you got to clean it and soak it really well after so it doesn't clog. So I'm just lightly airbrushing the edges to make the whole thing pop. You can see that's a very intense blue, which I love. But if you wanted it paler, you just use the dilution solution. Okay, so that is the see-through. Again, if I put it over the pink, it's probably not going to pop as much as I want. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix some of the blue with base white. So base white is a very thick, opaque color. It's not see-through and watery like the other ones are. It is very thick and has a lot more viscosity to it. It's a lot more syrupy. So we are going to thin it with the airbrush color. Usually to run it through an airbrush, I would thin it with just dilution solution, but because this is water, we can use this in place of the dilution solution to thin the texture. Because if you run it through the airbrush just by itself, it's too thick. It will clog up a little bit. So that's why you have to thin it with either a regular color or a dilution solution to make sure it runs through. So I did 5 drops of the base white. I'm going to start with 1 drop of the blue because the blue is so intense that you don't want to add too much at once. I'm just using a toothpick to stir it. I'll show you the color once I get it all stirred. Just kind of got to look at it for that step. Alright, so I like that shade. See how you can see where the white mixed in, made it more opaque. And then we'll compensate with 4 drops of dilution solution. Since it was 5 drops of base white, I usually do a 1-to-1 ratio, but we did 1 drop of blue, so we only have to do 4.
So Belinda was asking, the large nozzle included with the airbrush kit or separate?
It's a separate airbrush gun. So this is the medium size, and honestly, I've never had any problem with it. I don't usually airbrush metallics personally because I do find that they're a lot thicker, and so I just dust them or paint them on top afterwards. But for every other paint, including this base white, as long as you thin it a little bit, it runs through perfectly. It never clogs or anything like that.
You could try it and let them know.
Yeah, definitely. I can try it and let them know. I think that I have a couple of metallics somewhere.
And we don't have the larger nozzle yet, but coming soon.
Yeah. So now I just ran out the rest of my blue that I was using, and I put in the new opaque blue, and I'm just going to make sure that that runs through. All right. Now I'm going to be gentle. Now I'm not actually looking straight at this. I'm looking at it from behind. So I'm going to do my best to just edge the whole thing. But you're going to see, because of the base white, how well it pops. Now it will take a couple layers, of course, to build it up. Can you guys see that? Do you see how it doesn't look purple like it would blue on top of pink? It looks blue. It looks intense. And that's the awesome thing that I love about this base white, is that you can get really, really intensely opaque colors when you layer it, rather than being at the mercy of whatever opacity the color is right out of the bottle. These are completely customizable, so since they're made for mixing into Isomalt, they're pretty thick and they're pretty dark and opaque, pigmented. So they're very, very deep colors. But you can change those with the dilution solution, which comes with the base white or with the whole kit if you get all of them. And you can make any shade that you want. The whole kit comes with a mixing guide that I made for some common colors, but this way you're not kind of stuck with whatever color is in the bottle that you get. It has complete customizability, if that's a word, to make whatever colors that you want.
So Brooke did it a few days ago with the metallics, and it worked great.
Oh, awesome.
Did she have to do dilution?
Yeah, did you have to thin it or anything, or was it good just right out of the bottle?
Okay, Jackie says metallics go through the Dinky Doodle beautifully.
Sweet.
You need to dilute it a little and let the coats dry slightly to build up the layers.
Okay, perfect. So just like regular airbrushing on Isomalt or airbrushing in general, just build it up.
If it blocks, just pulse and pull back the button.
Okay, perfect.
So, that's
good
really
to
exciting.
know.
So, Lindsay wants to know, what is the benefit of the dilution solution over the water?
Dilution solution is, it has different elements in it, but the main thing that I find makes a difference is it uses glycerin in it, and it makes it really smooth. It's just a little bit, but it makes it really, really smooth, and it bonds with the sugar way better than water. So it actually sticks to it better, it gives you a more even coat, and it just makes it go on smoother. So you can use water in a pinch, it works. I don't like to use alcohol because the alcohol will affect the texture of the colors and can make them separate and change color even because of chemical reactions it can have, but you definitely can use water if you need to. Now I'm doing more of a very thin overall coat on these bottom pieces, and you see how it is getting slightly purple tinted. If you can see, I don't know what light is best to show you guys, but it is getting a little bit of a purple tinge, but if I wanted more of an intense purple, I would have used the transparent blue, or just mixed up a purple using my candy apple red and my ocean blue, and a little bit of dilution solution to make it lighter. All right, so I have all of my edges, at least that I can see from this angle, all airbrushed, so I'm going to turn this off and switch the camera back up so you guys can see at a little bit better angle.
Michelle would like to know, how would you secure it to a cake?
I would attach it once you get to the menu, most importantly, but I would take it separately, and you can, if you have access to a microwave, I would just bring a little bit of liquid Isomalt with you so that you can heat it up and use that to attach it to your cake, and then put some supports under it, just like if you were putting a heavy top tier on top of it, you would put some dowels under it if it's a really heavy piece. All right, now I haven't really let this dry, so I might smudge the blue a little bit, but I want to hold this up so you can see it.
Like
Ta-da! It really does. So I'm going to hold it up close a little bit. Obviously, you guys are going to take more time to actually look at it from the front and make sure you get every single little angle and everything like that. But isn't that awesome? I feel like the free form of the back just makes it look really like it's just floating out in the ocean somewhere. And you can customize the direction that it's tilting at. And because we use the same blue for the background and the jellyfish, we just added the white, it matches perfectly. So you didn't have to grab a different bottle of color or anything like that and then risk the tones of the blue not matching. You use the same one, you just kind of alter it and tweak it a little bit. Ta-da! What do you guys think?
It could just go onto a cake. You don't even have to have the back.
Yeah, definitely. You don't have to do the back. I just wanted to have something for it to display on a little bit easier. But you can for sure just put it right onto a cake and use Isomalt to attach it. Again, I would put it on when you get there. Just carry it separately in a little box. And yeah, so what do you guys think? Are you guys thinking of all the different ways that you can use these techniques? Let me go to my comments again here. Awesome! I'm so glad you guys like it. Do you have any final questions? Anything like that? I did want to show you a couple more examples of airbrushing. So you guys may have seen this, but this is my next Zoom class project that is still open if you want to register, but this one's all airbrush too. So just going more into that airbrushing, you can see he's all shaded. The scale textures are going in with the dragon. That one's on my website right now. I do Zoom classes every month, so this is one of them. All the accents are Isomalt, the eyes, the spikes and everything, so that's more using those same colors, that ocean blue, and we're going to use some of the, I'm going to show you how to mix up black and everything for all of the horns and stuff. So that is my next Zoom class, and because we're doing this in coordination with I usually do a monthly play date, I wanted to give you guys a sneak peek like I normally do on my monthly live streams of my next project that we're going to do next month. This is the bubble wand. This is a holographic bubble wand. It's all Isomalt. So this is what we're going to do in my next free live stream if you guys enjoyed this and want to tune in. Yeah, it's totally free. It's just on Facebook. I just wanted to tell you guys about it first. So we have our new bubble wand mold. We're going to be going over how to make teeny tiny little clear bubbles, and then this really cool holographic effect in the Isomalt. So that will be next month. I'll post all the details about it on my Facebook page after this. All right, and yeah, if you guys made the pieces, make sure to tag me and to send me pictures because I would really love to see your jellyfish. Does anybody have any final questions? Awesome. Oh, I'm so glad that you guys like it. Fantastic. Well, make sure if you missed any of this, you can go back and watch it from the beginning, and all the lives from today are going to be available to rewatch. So make sure if you missed any of the ones this morning that you go back and you watch them because they are amazing. I've been watching all day and they are just so incredible. Up next, make sure to stay around because Myra from Zioto Pen is going to be doing some more Isomalt fun and just using the Zioto Pen in different ways. It is absolutely incredible. She's so talented, and there's more demos throughout the day, so make sure you stick around.
Okay, Jill has a quick question.
Yes, we still have a couple minutes.
Can you put it on top of buttercream?
Yes, you can put it on top of buttercream. Make sure that you spray your finished pieces with the clear edible glaze spray. That's your final step after it's painted and put together. That will lock out moisture, but with the buttercream, if it's going to be on there a while, I still would line the back of it with fondant or parchment or something like that, just so it doesn't have direct contact with it for too long. But the only thing that would really happen is maybe the color might seep just from the moisture, but it shouldn't affect the Isomalt itself.
Somebody wants to know where can they register for the dragon class?
On my website, simicakes.com, there's a link in this description. If you go to my online store and then go in the featured specials is where all the kits are or classes. You'll see it on there for any of my Zoom classes. And they're open for all skill levels too. So, All right, awesome, awesome. If you have any more questions that I wasn't able to get to, because I do have to jump off here in a minute, please feel free to send me a message. I can send you links or anything that you need to different stuff. And make sure that you stick around because, again, there is so many amazing demos throughout the day. And up next is going to be Myra Estrada from Zeotopin.
We'll see you in February.
Yay! I'm so excited to see you guys in February at That Takes the Cake. I cannot wait. It's been way too long since I've seen you guys. But thank you so much to Capital Confectioners for having me here. This was so much fun. Yeah, thank you, Kyla. Mitchie, yeah, awesome. It's just amazing. I can't wait to watch the rest of the demos. You guys are doing an absolutely amazing job with this event. It's so exciting. I love stuff like this. So thank you for having me. Thank you to everybody who's been watching, and hopefully you'll continue to watch. Again, let me know if you have any other questions. Just send me a message. That'll be the fastest way to get in contact with me, and I will be happy to answer it. All right, looks like we're all good. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and I will be watching the next demo with you guys right now. Bye.